And you're going to see each one of the major arms control agreements put in that context, because what the current administration wants is unilateralism. That is, the right to do whatever we want, when we want to do it, without the restrictions of international agreements.
I mean that treaty is ancient history.
Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld is Mr. Star Wars. He has staked his entire professional reputation on building a Star Wars system. But the problem is, Rumsfeld and Bush and Cheney are in too deep. They are too close to Lockheed Martin. They're too close to the weapons manufacturers. They need a Star Wars system to keep the profits going and to command the high ground of outer space.
If we're going to get into space, we shouldn't be worried about a treaty or somebody hurting somebody's feelings. I think as Secretary Rumsfeld just came back from Europe and he met with many of the European leaders, and he basically said, look, if a missile defense or assets in space are in the national security interest of the United States, we're going to do it. We're going to protect ourselves. And hopefully you guys will join us, but if not, we need to move forward.
Worst of all, with this intention to go ahead with a national missile defense program, is it is only the tip of the iceberg. It is really an excuse to put U.S. weapons in space. This is nothing more than a threat to make space a new battleground which the United States will dominate and render the rest of the world subject to our dominion from space. And all we will have started by putting weapons into space is to ensure that other nations in the years ahead will make their own space warfare efforts, and we will have succeeded in increasing the danger to the United States of America and its citizens.
The U.S. military sees nuclear power systems orbiting in space as necessary to power weapons in space.
In outer space, there are no extension cords. Therefore, the military has experimented with a number of methods to get unlimited power to energize their space-based systems. RTGs, for example, will give you a limited amount of electricity with plutonium. But the military would really like to go to full-blown nuclear reactors in outer space. If you have a laser beam based in outer space or a particle beam weapon, you have to supply large quantities of electrical power to energize the system. And the only known way of getting such fabulous amounts of cheap portable power is with nuclear power plants in outer space.
As the U.S. Air Force Board report, New World Vistas, Air and Space Power for the 21st Century states, a natural technology to enable high power is nuclear power in space. Setting the emotional issues of nuclear power aside, this technology offers a viable alternative for large amounts of power in space. Indeed, a key reason why NASA insists on using nuclear power in space is its desire to coordinate its activities with the U.S. military.
We sometimes forget that NASA and the Pentagon are very close when it comes to funding. For example, in the initial stages, 50% of the funding of the Space Shuttle mission came from the Pentagon. We forget the fact that there are entire Space Shuttle missions that are funded exclusively by the Pentagon to launch military satellites and to test Star Wars-type machinery in outer space. Therefore, it's not a surprise that the military is very much interested in perfecting plutonium power packs.
The U.S. has launched almost 30 nuclear-powered space devices, and there's been accidents, including the SNAP 9A crashing back to Earth, spreading deadly plutonium. Moreover, in 2003, the U.S. embarked on Project Prometheus, a multi-billion-dollar program increasing the use of space nuclear power, including building nuclear rockets. Yet the European Space Agency in 2004 launched its Rosetta space probe, energized by solar cells rather than nuclear power. Using safe solar energy, it's the rendezvous with a comet near Jupiter.
When you hear about the potential dangers of the militarization of outer space, there are several things that the average citizen can do. First, get informed. Go beyond the propaganda. Go beyond the mythology that we're simply exploring outer space to satisfy our scientific curiosity. Realize that one of the main engines behind this has been the Pentagon, which desires to use the high ground of outer space for its weaponry. And then, after you go beyond the propaganda, get active. Join an organization. Write to your congressman or congresswoman. Get politically active in order to make sure that social change is a byproduct of our education. And remember, it's just not you. It's your children. It's the environment. It's our future. Our future depends upon a space that is free of nuclear weapons, free of nuclear power plants. Our world depends upon an environment that is clean, healthy, and is for everyone, not just the multinational corporations.
Among U.S. public officials strongly against Star Wars is Congressman Dennis Kucinich of Ohio. Here he is giving the keynote speech at the international meeting in Washington in 2000 of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space.
When we see the presence of so many thousands of our brothers and sisters in this Capitol today and tomorrow to protest the policies of the International Monetary Fund, which the structural adjustment policies, which are crushing people, countries around the world, which are making it impossible for them to have decent living conditions. When we see the World Bank being used as an institution that makes it even tougher for countries to be able to meet the needs of their population, I think that we can come to an understanding that this policy can only lead to more instability around the world. And what it should lead to, and what it must lead to, is a reawakening of a social consciousness in this country to challenge our fellow citizens to realize that we are creating the seeds of the destruction of people all over this world, and it inevitably will come back to this country as well. Because it is a moral issue. We're a country that should be about turning swords into plowshares, and that's what the ABM Treaty was about. Not in fashioning new, technologically superior swords to hold like swords of Damocles over the populations of the world. We cannot survive as a nation with that approach. We need to, as a nation, encourage our citizenry to be active citizens in changing the political process. And so what you need to do is to inspire people to recognize the potency of their own involvement, of their ability to make a difference, of the necessity of each person standing up and speaking out, of the necessity of us collectively challenging the policies at the ballot box and, if necessary, in the streets of this nation.
And I think what we really need to have is a new link, new intimate link between the environmental movement, the justice movement, and the peace movement.
United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan, in opening the third UN Conference on Exploration and Peaceful Uses of Outer Space in 1999, declared, above all, we must guard against the misuse of outer space. We cannot view the expanse of space as another battleground for our earthly conflicts. This, however, is not the vision of the United States government. There must be strong opposition in the United States and international action to stop Star Wars, to prevent the heavens from being turned into a war zone. There needs to be global agreement banning all weapons in space. We must work, and we'll have to work fast and hard to keep space for peace. This has been Karl Grossman. Thanks for watching.